Good morning, Luis and James. How are you? I hope you are okay and safe. Today and the following days of this week, we are again to discuss another chapter in our subject personal development. But prior our discussion, let me again reiterate that in the previous chapter, we discussed personal relationship among adolescents. And we identified that this type of relationship is unique to the individual because there is an existence of privacy, intimacy, loyalty, disclosure, and trust as important factors in a personal relationship. Okay? And personal relationship, as we discussed in our previous meeting, is usually present among family members. Not only among family members, but also close friends and lovers whom we share our intimate relationship and even information with them. Yan. And in this chapter, we will expand the relationships of adolescents like you to a wider group of people, such as your schoolmates, the school authorities, the community and its members, okay, or a fellow member of social organizations, even strangers that you meet casually along the way, like social gatherings and even small groupings of friends in schools, which usually refers to as cliques. Yan. And so, these are the following learning outcomes, and that at the end of the discussion, you should be able to discuss the concept of social relationship, explain the social intelligence theory of Goleman, and determine the types of social influence. So sit back and relax, and let us begin our journey in knowing, discussing, and also reflecting on the concept of social relationship. And what is social relationship? Okay? Social relationship tend to be less intimate compared to personal relationship, with lesser self-disclosure involved, but may still be exclusive and may demand certain levels of loyalty. And social relationship is a broad definition of how we interact and behave with other people whom we are dealing with, although with less intimate and lesser self-disclosure involvement. Okay? And not only interacting with them, but also on how they interact and behave also, okay, when we interact with them. But remember, social relationship entails lesser intimate relationship, although it demands a certain level of loyalty. Now, middle and late adolescents usually find themselves in the company of their peers, their friends, okay? And these peers or friends are usually from school or neighborhood or part of the community. And it is true that as adolescents gravitate more toward peer groups, their attachment to their family as their primary source of personal development shifts toward these peer groups. Okay? Because adolescents like you are able to create friendship and new attachment. Okay? And this is very critical in your development as adolescents as you move to young adult. Okay? So, after your personal relationship inside your family and other close relatives, it is natural that you go out of your comfort zone and create new friends, okay, or new friendship with other people. And that is very important for you to be able to develop yourself and to find really who you are. Okay? So it means to say that your relationship does not end with personal relationship among your close family members and relatives, but it is also important for you to find social interaction, creating a social relationship that will fully allow you to become a better young adult later on. To better understand the concept of social relationship and the factors entailed to it, let us discuss Goleman's social intelligence theory. You already know about Goleman, right? He is the author of Emotional Intelligence and also Social Intelligence. And he explained how our brains are wired to connect with other people. And Goleman said that most of the time, we interact with other people, we communicate in a social group because we are dictated by our neurological reflexes. So there is something or somewhat a connection of our reflexes, neurological reflexes, and our relationship with other people. Okay? Because according to Goleman, our brain is responsible if we want or we do not want to mingle with other people. Because at the end of the day, it is ourselves, it is us who will decide whether we interact with others or not. So, in the theory of Goleman then, okay, it is manifested that we interact or we do not interact with other people in the society because of our neurological reflexes. Whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not, to interact with other people in the society, it is us who will decide. Okay? In connection to our neurological reflexes to social interaction. Goleman further said that our OFC or orbitofrontal cortex part of the brain is connected directly into three major regions. We have the cortex, the amygdala, and the brainstem. And these regions of the brain are responsible for the assessment that our brain undertakes. And the instantaneous analysis of these three regions of the brain determine how we deal with and how we will handle other people. And the final action that we take is deliberate and conscious choice that we make. And we are always responsible for what we think and do, especially when we deal or interact with other people. This simply manifests then that our social interaction with other people in the society is somewhat has something to do with what is happening in our brain through our OFC. Okay? Because there is an instantaneous analysis on how we determine and how we deal with other people in the society. But it is true us that we are always responsible on how we really deal with other people in the society. Now, our social relationships, although dictated by our neurological reflexes, are also affected by other factors such as social influence. Meaning, aside from neurological reflexes, that's why we deal and interact with other people in the society. there are also other factors that will affect our social relationship with other people. Okay? And one of the many factors is what we call social influence. And social influence refers to the behavior, the actions, attitude, concepts, ideas, communications, wealth, and other resources that bring about changes in the belief, in the attitudes, and or behavior of person as a result of the action of other or another person. Okay? And this social influence and its definition came from the article on social influence written and discussed by Lisa Rashon. Now, there are varieties of social relationship according to Herbert Kellman. So that is Herbert Kellman. Okay. One variety of social influence in the work of Herbert Kellman is compliance. Compliance is when a person seems to agree and follow what is requested or required of him or her to do or believe in, but does not necessarily have to really believe or agree to it. Okay? Meaning to say, when we talk about compliance, a person will come to agree or comply, okay, with what is requested or expected of him or her, but not necessarily believe in that request or in that expectation required of him or her. Okay? Like for example, when we comply with rules and regulations, even though we do not believe in that kind of rule, why do we comply? Because that is the expected behavior expected to us that we must have to comply because this rule is existing. Okay? Especially if that rule existed already for a long period of time and had been accepted by the members of the society. Okay? Yan. We comply with policies, regulations, requirements, rules, even if we do not necessarily have to really believe or agree to it, but we still comply. Another variety of social influence is identification. Identification is when a person is influenced by someone he or she likes or looks up to, like for example, your idol, a movie star, a social celebrity, or a superhero, okay? Or group of people that you look up to because they have something that really interests you. Okay? Like for example, in our adolescents today, especially those who are at the early stage of adolescence, di ba, mahilig kayo sa K-pop. And that is identification. You are being influenced somewhat by those people that you idolize and you look up to. And why do you idolize them? Why do you look up to them? Because there is a factor na nakikita nyo sa kanila, why do you idolize them? Okay? Halimbawa, bakit ang favorite superhero ko ay si Spider-Man? Ha? Because there is a factor na nakikita ko kay Spider-Man na sa tingin ko, okay, nakakatch niya yung attention ko compared to other superhero. Yan. In real life, bakit ina-idolize ko si Andres Bonifacio, for example? Ha? Siguro dahil I was also came from a background like Andres Bonifacio. Diba? At nakikita ko din sa kanya kung gaano kahalaga ang family, diba? Ang relationship sa family. That is why I idolize him. And I identify myself in that person as someone that I look up to because there is a factor that I see in him that I do not see to other people. That's why I idolize him. Okay? The third one is internalization. Internalization is when a person is able to own a certain belief or act from the giver of influence and is willing to make it known publicly and privately. Meaning to say, if the person who provides the influence is perceived to be trustworthy and of good judgment, we accept the belief and we also advocate the belief by integrating that kind of belief from the social influencer into our belief system. Okay? And the most permanent response to social influence is internalization. Because your motivation to be right does not depend on reward or punishment, but because you know the person is of good character, that is why you internalize that certain belief or act from the giver of influence. Okay? So, you allow that kind of belief or act from the giver of influence to your belief system. Magiging parte na yan ng paniniwala mo. Okay? Ang tawag yan, internalization. You allow yourself to be influenced, okay, by the giver of influence, and you make it known to the world that this belief that you are acting out in the society came from the internalization of the belief, okay, from the giver of influence. Aside from the variety of social influence by Goleman, there are other types of social influence, and they are also universally accepted types of social influence. Okay? One is conformity. It is considered to be the most common and pervasive form of social influence because it involves a change in behavior, belief, or thinking to be like others. Okay? And there are two varieties of conformity. Okay? Informal conformity, in the work of Goleman, it is internalization, and normative conformity or compliance. Okay? So these are the two varieties of conformity. We have the informal and normative conformity. In normative conformity, we comply or we conform to the society, okay, because you are expected to comply with the existing rules and regulations of the society. But in an informal conformity, you actually are allowing yourself to be influenced by the belief, okay, by the actions, by the ideology of the giver of influence, and you internalize it and you act it out in the society. Okay? Yan. Ganda ng quotation. Sabi niya, don't try to be different. Just be good. To be good is different enough. Now, take note that conformity is very strong, particularly among middle and late adolescents like you. And this is supported by the fact that an adolescent in this age group is most susceptible to a compelling need to seek approval from others and be accepted by them in order to become a friend and to belong to a social group. This means that an adolescent like you will really want to go out of your comfort zone, okay, and seek to find your identity to other people in the society, like your peer groups, your circle of friends. But always remember that in seeking this kind of approval from others outside your comfort zone, outside your personal relationship with your family, may have a tendency towards either positive or negative result. Okay? This tendency towards conformity among adolescents may lead to either positive or negative results, depending on the belief, okay, the intentions and attitudes of the members of the group that you are joining with or to, and the extent of their influence to you as an individual. That is why be very careful when you look and join and become member of a peer group. You must always take into consideration that when joining a group, it must be for the development of all the members in becoming a responsible and a good citizen of the society. Okay? At your age as adolescents, okay, conformity actually is brought about by peer pressure, often imposed on a member of a group to demonstrate some semblance of loyalty, which is often deemed necessary to maintain one's relationship with the group. Actually, there are groups or organizations wherein before you will become a member, you must have really to do some challenges, okay? To do some actions that will really show your loyalty to that group. Okay? And this is often necessary, deemed to be important, so as to maintain one's relationship with the group. Okay? But I tell you, there are certain groups wherein it will not really facilitate development, or it will not really bring an individual to develop himself or herself in becoming a good person. Okay? Because conformity is one reason why group members look and behave similarly with one another, such as wearing similar clothes or enjoying the same movies and music genre. Okay? But one thing to look into is that, is this group really for the development of yourself? Is this group really for personal development, making you become a good person? Okay? Because if you happen to join a group and will let you do things that will not really bring the best out in you in becoming a good person, then do not join that kind of group. Okay? Because as they say, wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it. Right is right even if no one is doing it. So be very careful in choosing and joining a group of peer that will not really bring you into becoming a person that will show your identity and become a part of the society that will look into harmonious way of interacting and relationship with other members of the society. Okay? And then we also have conversion as other type of social influence. Conversion occurs when an individual wholeheartedly changes his or her original thinking and belief, action, and attitudes to align with those of the other members of the group. This is somewhat a very serious type of social influence already. Okay? Because you are willing to give up wholeheartedly your original thinking, belief, actions, and attitudes, and you embrace wholeheartedly those belief, thinking, actions, and attitudes of the group that you wanted to become a member. Okay? An example of conversion is religious conversions. Religious conversions are actually the typical types of this kind of social influence, where internalization happens to make a new set of beliefs, attitudes, and action, okay, for an individual to become a member of a certain group. Meaning to say, you really set aside your original belief and wholeheartedly accept, internalize, okay, and convert into the new belief and thinkings of the group that you join. We also have minority influence as other type of social influence. And this happens when a bigger number of people are influenced by much smaller number of people. Okay? And the minority's way of looking at and doing things are accepted by the majority. Okay? For example, when an influential, rich, and famous minority member of the society are being uh, accepted and looked up to by the majority of the society, then there is an influence coming from the minority. Okay? Or for example, when, and we also have reactance, it is when there is a willing rejection of a social influence being exerted on an individual or group. Okay? And it is a reverse reaction to some social influence that is being imposed by a person or group on another person. And whether the influence is right or not, nonconformity is the rejection of such influence. And reactance is also known as anti or nonconformity, because it is, as I said, a reverse reaction to some social influence that is being imposed by a person or group of persons on another. Okay? Like for example, an adolescent who is being prevailed upon by the parents to stay at home during weekends and help in the house chores may react and develop non-conforming behavior of not following his parents. And so, whether the influence, as I said, is right or not, nonconformity is the rejection of such influence. And then we also have obedience. It is another form of social influence wherein a person follows what someone tells him or her to do, although it may not necessarily reflect the person's set of belief or values. If you observe, it is somewhat similar to compliance. Okay? And similar to compliance, obedience usually stems from either respect or fear of the authority. That's why you need to abide or obey. Okay? But it may not necessarily reflect your set of belief or values. And And lastly, we have persuasion. Persuasion is used by one person or group to influence another to change their belief, actions, or attitudes by appealing to reason or emotion. There is no force here that is being used. Okay? You are not being complied. You are not being forced, okay, or intimidated out of fear in order to follow, okay, or to be influenced. But persuasion is used through appealing to reason or emotion in order for a person or a group of persons to be influenced by another. Okay? And when you are being persuaded, there is a change in your belief, actions, or attitude. Because the influence giver appealed to reasoning or emotion. And so indeed, social relationship is really a broad concept of how we interact and behave with other people. And in social relationship, we learn to cooperate with others in achieving a common objective through the proper and acceptable ways and methods, and through social influences that will really bring the goodness and best in us. If there are social influences that will not really bring the best in you and will not really abide through acceptable ways and methods, respecting other people's rights, then they are not really a good social influences. Okay? So dapat sa true lang tayo. Di ba? That will really bring the goodness and best in us. So with this, thank you for watching, and you are now ready to answer the activity given to you. And see you next week for another exciting discussion on leadership and followership. Good luck and God bless. Keep safe always and have fun learning.